Dennis, why don't we get started?
Good afternoon, I'm Dennis Galucki, and welcome to the 405th Imagine Buffalo program and our 27th virtual Imagine program, Imagine lecture, and all hosted by our wonderful Buffalo and Erie County Public Library. Thank you so much for joining us today. This program is created by the Center for the Study of Art and Architecture, History and Nature, or the acronym C-SAAHN as I pronounce it, and ImagineLifelongLearning.com. Now, we're going to start with our speaker shortly, but first a little housekeeping. Everyone watching will be muted during our speaker's presentation, which will last about 15 minutes or so. We'll have time for questions at the end, so if you do have a question, please type it into the chat box and we'll get to as many as we can. This program is being recorded. You'll be able to watch it again later on the library's Facebook and YouTube channels, and share the link with your networks if you could. As a reminder, Life Willing will be here on Zoom every Tuesday at 12:30 p.m. with a great lineup of local speakers. Now, today is the fourth Tuesday of the month. C-SAAHN's focus is on nature and science, and our theme is to imagine Greater Buffalo as a premier cultural and nature center. Now, Greater Buffalo includes Western New York and wonderful Chautauqua County. So today's featured speakers are John Jablonski and Arthur Pearson. John Jablonski holds a bachelor's degree in natural resources from Cornell University and a master's degree from the University of Wisconsin-Madison in urban and regional planning. As a co-founder and the executive director of the Chautauqua Watershed Conservancy since 1993, he has led successful efforts to conserve 2 miles of Chautauqua Lake and outlet shoreline and over 1,000 acres of lands across Chautauqua County. He has served as a member of the New York State Region 9 Open Space Committee and currently serves as on the board of directors of the New York State Federation of Lake Associations. Arthur Pearson has a richly varied background in the arts, conservation, museum collections, and philanthropy. He spent 25 years with the Gaylord and Dorothy Donnelly Foundation, most recently as its director of Chicago programs. In this role, he worked hand in glove with a portfolio of more than 200 nonprofit groups with an emphasis on building their operational and financial capacities to meet mission goals. He has also written about a range of conservation issues and an award-winning biography of George Fell, and is a master stained glass craftsman. He joined the Tory Peterson Institute as its first CEO in April of last year. So now let's welcome John and Arthur, who are going to talk about why watersheds matter. And we're going to start with Arthur.
Okay, thank you very much for the invitation to share with you today. So I'm going to do a brief presentation. And as Doug mentioned, I've been on the job just about a year, and it has been an interesting year to say the least for us and everybody. But among the joys of the past year has been leading the organization through a robust strategic planning process. And let me do the next, there we go. So among the things that we've understood as a result of this process and really started to embrace is that among the many accomplishments of Roger Tory Peterson, his unique signature contribution to the arc of the American conservation movement, in fact, of the global conservation movement, is in fact the modern field guide. The field guide, first published in 1934, sparked a worldwide movement to connect people with nature as never before, helping millions of people, amateur to professional, really to be able to see nature, to put a name on it, to fall in love with it. And what made the Peterson Guide revolutionary for its time was, in fact, its use of art. So Roger Tory Peterson was, as I think all of us know, a passionate ornithologist, but he actually trained as an artist. So Peterson understood the power of art to inform, to inspire, and to illuminate. And through the lovely images that he did, he allowed us to provide for quick and accurate identification in the field. So, embracing this legacy, RTPI, according to our new strategic plan, we embrace RTPI as a living embodiment of the Peterson Field Guide. And like the Field Guide, we are a trusted source of information, inspiration, and illumination. And like the Field Guide, we also use art as the primary lens through which to engage our visitors in the natural world. So we host exhibitions of world-class nature art, but it's not just art for art's sake. It's art with intention, just as Roger Tory Peterson did. It's art that matters to the planet. And what we mean by that is that we host world-class artists from, well, all across the world, as well as new artists, emerging artists, diverse voices, and it's beautiful art, exemplifying the beauty of nature, but it's more than that. The art also reveals the challenges that nature faces. The art also illuminates the opportunities for us to protect, to steward, to restore, to have a hopeful relationship with nature as we recover it from the challenges that it faces. So for instance, our first exhibition of 2021 this year features photographs about osprey taken by a local artist by the name of Jean Jablonski. So these photographs are beautiful, exemplifying just how beautiful osprey are, but again, it doesn't stop there. The exhibition takes a deep dive into an awareness of the fact that we almost brought osprey to the brink of extinction. So Roger Tory Peterson was among the first to identify DDT as the cause for the collapse of populations of osprey, bald eagles, and a number of other species. And then Roger Tory Peterson, along with Rachel Carson and numerous others, it was more than a decade-long effort that eventually led to the banning of DDT, at least in the United States, and then the slow, long, decades-long recovery of osprey populations throughout the country. The exhibition then comes full circle and reminds us the fact that conservation is a never-ending opportunity and challenge. And that's why we're excited to be working with the Watershed Conservancy, who, as Doug mentioned, has protected more than 1,000 acres in Chautauqua County, including this preserve right here that you see on the screen. And you see in the background there, you see an osprey nesting pole. And for the first time last year, a nesting pair of osprey made their nest, successfully fledged young, and they are in fact the subject of our exhibition this year. So this is the kind of exhibition that we're going to be doing constantly. Beautiful art, exemplifying significant conservation challenges, but also revealing and celebrating the fact that while people have sometimes been the problem, we are also the solution to make a healthier natural world. So we don't have a lot of time to talk about this aspect, but in addition to the artwork that we do, we also want to find ways to be active participants in recovering the health of our natural lands throughout Chautauqua County. So Roger Tory Peterson, as I think many people know, was born and raised in Jamestown, and it's the nature of our area that inspired him to become the international ambassador for nature that eventually was. So we're going to be working with John, Audubon, and other partners to do what we can to be hands-on to recover the ecological health of our region, to make sure that it's accessible and healthy to inspire future generation of artists, conservationists, and those who just love and appreciate the beauty of our natural area. So very, very briefly, that's who we are. That is the new RTPI, the living embodiment of the Peterson Field Guide, art that matters to the planet, nature that matters to you. Dennis, back to you.
Well, we'll throw it right in John's lap, John. And again, John, think in terms of the Q&A, and we'll allow time for that. Go ahead.
Oh, nice to see. I wish I could see everyone who was here. I really appreciate this opportunity. Thank you, Dennis. The Chautauqua Watershed Conservancy was founded in 1990, and we have, as Dennis has mentioned, 1,000 acres at this point, 31 preserves. Whoops. Our mission is to preserve and enhance the water quality, scenic beauty, and ecological health of the lakes, streams, and watersheds of the Chautauqua region. And let me just get my screen shared here so we all can join in here. Okay, can you see it now?
Yes.
Okay, good. The Chautauqua Watershed Conservancy serves the Chautauqua region, which is a county-wide organization. And since the topic of this is watersheds, this is a slide of the watersheds of the Chautauqua County. You can see the southern 2/3 of the county drains to the Mississippi Basin to the Gulf of Mexico. The northern quarter or 1/3 drains to Lake Erie and flows to the North Atlantic. So we have a continental divide in the middle of our service area. And one thing that's really important to note is that every land parcel in a watershed contributes water and potentially pollutants to the body of water below it, no matter how small or how large it is. Land use and land cover drives water quality, and that's why watersheds are so important to watersheds. A watershed is a basin from which all the land drains to a body of water below it. Rooftops and pavement and lawns deliver nutrients, sediments, and bacteria-laden waters, loading lakes with nutrients and sediments, potentially producing algae blooms and dense plants. What you see here is the Lakewood area of Chautauqua Lake, and with lots of dense paved surfaces, impervious surfaces of rooftops and pavement, there's a lot of pollution going into the lake unfiltered. So what falls from the sky already is polluted. Science indicates that in order to keep our lakes and streams healthy, we need to maintain a minimum of 70% forest cover in our watersheds. Water quality and water treatment costs are correlated to the percent forest cover in a watershed. So if you live in a community that gets its water from a surface reservoir, it's really important to keep that surface reservoir watershed in forest. And there's been studies to show that the cost of treating that water goes up as the amount of forest goes down in those public drinking water supply watersheds. So keeping land in forests, keep waters clean, and keep the cost to the water users down as well. How does a forest work? Waters are cleansed by the forest tree roots absorbing nutrients. The tendrils of the roots hold soil in place against the force of water. Tree and shrub roots absorb nutrients directly from small streams. So it's really important. The headwater forests we have in the region are so important to the bodies of water below. The little streams that only flow intermittently, they are in touch with the water that comes through them, and the tree and the shrub and the native plants that live there, they actively absorb pollutants from the water. They act as a natural filter, absorbing the nutrients so that the water below is cleaner. Whoops. What science has also found is when areas are developed, you can use stormwater treatment practices and better site design, but you still can't maintain the quality of water coming from a watershed once it's developed. So you can see from this chart, uncontrolled development gives you this rapid increase in phosphorus coming from a watershed as it's developed with impervious cover. This is with better site design, the curve is a little lower, and with stormwater treatment practices and better site design, you still see a substantially increased load, more than double the background load. Even if you use everything you possibly can when you develop an area, you're still going to probably double the phosphorus going into a watershed from a developed area from what it was before it was developed. So keeping land and forest is really essential to maintaining water quality. And this is another depiction of that, which shows that if you develop 10% of the watershed with impervious surfaces, you see a decline in water quality. You take that between 10 and 25%, and you really see impacts to the macroinvertebrates, the insects that live in the stream, the biodiversity of those decline, And when you get to about 25% impervious surfaces in a suburban watershed, the streams in that watershed no longer support the aquatic life that was there before development. So again, keeping lands and forests is absolutely essential to maintaining water quality below. One of the things the Conservancy strives for, and it's really pretty applicable across Western New York, our area streams held native brook trout. If we can maintain healthy forests, we can maintain trout streams. Unfortunately, with climate change, it becomes harder and harder to maintain streams for brook trout. A lot of our streams are maintained with brown trout now instead. But by keeping our streams healthy, by keeping forests intact, we can maintain trout populations and the receiving bodies of water, whether they're Lake Erie or Chautauqua Lake or Cassadaga Lake or other streams. We can maintain the water quality for our families, each other and our families to enjoy in a positive way, and also to keep the water healthy for drinking. The Conservancy undertakes conservation of the lands of highest ecological, hydrological, and scenic value across the Chautauqua region. And we work directly engaging landowners to landscape for water quality and wildlife habitat. We work directly with municipalities and landowners where we identify sites where there are erosion problems or other pollution problems to actually take care of those. Another concern that's major across the globe are bird populations and insect populations are in crisis. And our activities not only encourage people to landscape for wildlife and water quality, but to not use the herbicides and pesticides that kill the essential insect populations that support breeding birds to raise their children in a successful way. Here's a map of our 31 sites across the Chautauqua region. And some of our technical assistance activities, we've partnered with many organizations on approximately 14 erosion control projects across the Chautauqua region, mainly in the Chautauqua Lake watershed. We have a lakescapes program where we work with landowners to plant lakeshore buffers, replant them or let them grow back to native plants. And in the left photo, you can see a lot of milkweed there, and with a monarch butterfly on the milkweed. We also encourage people to construct rain gardens to capture and infiltrate their stormwater. And we work with municipalities and water districts and others. The site on the left was a site on Chautauqua Lake where we observed severe soil erosion and lake sedimentation occurring. And we worked with the town of Chautauqua to design a stormwater basin. This is in the middle of the basin that was designed to capture what was happening on the left. And on the right, we're working with the village of Lakewood to deal with a flooding problem on Fairmont Avenue in Lakewood to capture that stormwater before it floods the state road. Over the next 10 years, we intend to conserve at a landscape scale stream corridors and wetlands and steep slopes and large blocks of headwater forests and special habitats. We hope to conserve and restore as much of the forests and wetlands of our regions as possible, and really take it to a bigger scale from the scattered sites we have now. We also intend to have a climate change element in that, because conserving and restoring forests really is a very important tool in carbon sequestration to fight climate change as well. So with that, I thank you for the opportunity to speak.
That was great, John. Thank you very much. Melissa, do we have any questions that have come in on the chat box?
We do not have any questions yet.
Good. Well, then let's chat for a bit ourselves, fellas. I'm delighted to see that the two of you are working hand in glove together to each fulfill your own missions, separate missions, but yet very much connected. Has this always been the case, or is this something new evolving?
I'll let John handle it first, because you've been around a little longer than I have.
We've been cooperating for a long time on tours, and especially invasive species management, to identify potential outbreaks of insects such as hemlock woody adelgid. We've been doing forest surveys for several years now in that effort, cooperating on identifying outbreaks of invasive water chestnut in area waters, and also on our TPI staff have been very helpful in helping us inventory the biodiversity of our preserves and lands that are potentially under consideration for purchase as nature preserves. And we hope to develop those roles even further going forward.
I'm aware of
I'm sorry, please go ahead, Dennis.
Arthur, I was going to say, I'm aware of one connection, had it on a personal basis with Juan Leenders from Roger Tory Peterson Institute, and yourself, John, in looking at a parcel of a few acres of property and developing, I noticed, with corporate involvement, Commons Engine, an educational program. That's exciting to me to see that sort of development happen, where we're educating literally throughout the link of education. I always say K through college and beyond. Could you describe that relationship a little bit?
We have had over the past few years a camera located north of Chautauqua Lake and our preserves up there, which was broadcast electronically to a school in northern Chautauqua County for the students to see what was going on there, which was a really neat 360-degree innovative camera and really neat educational opportunity for those students.
Good. Arthur, go ahead.
Well, what I enjoyed about this presentation, I think it really well exemplifies why we are good partners. We fundamentally share the same goal. We want healthy lands, healthy waters, healthy watersheds. We come at it from a little bit different perspective, though, and I think that's a positive thing. These are complex issues, highly technical issues, and John did a very good job of helping us to have a little insight just to how complex and complicated they are. Sometimes we need to really tell people specifically about those kinds of things. Sometimes that kind of information can be overwhelming, though. And so that our job fundamentally is to help people approach these same issues from a different perspective. So through art, through other kinds of programs, we can have a less technical, a less complex way of coming in and appreciating nature first and foremost for its beauty, for how it makes you feel, for the activities that you get to do in it. And then once people start to get acclimated and feel comfortable in that environment, then we can say, hey, if we love this, here's some of the challenges we're facing, and here's some of the things that we can do to work together to try to make it better. And that's, again, where the partnership with the Watershed Conservancy comes in, because we can talk about hand in glove, protecting land, dealing with complex issues, just from different perspectives, all toward the same goal.
Let me, because I hadn't heard that figure, John, that you alluded to, the 70% sustainability ratio, if you will. And I'm wondering if you looked at Western New York, Niagara County to Erie County to Chautauqua County, just those three contiguous counties, could we see ourselves in that 70% range for the whole? Because obviously a city urban area like Buffalo is going to be different than a more rural area like Chautauqua County. Is that a way to look at our region?
I think some areas are so developed that you'll never get back to that 70%. But for places like Chautauqua County and Cattaraugus County and Allegheny County, I think you could. Chautauqua County, I think we're in the 50 to 60% range. As farms went out of business in the 1900s, the forest cover increased substantially, but then in the last 20 years, it's been decreasing again. So we peaked probably in the 1980s for forest cover in Chautauqua County, back from the late 1800s, but now due to continued suburban development and forest fragmentation, even in the 30 years the Conservancy has been around, where we had a preserve west of Chautauqua Lake and had hoped and expected to pick up 3 or 4 properties around it, and now there's houses going up on those properties. And even one of the property owners who we thought land we were going to get to add to the adjacent preserve, that land's been sold for development now. So we're just seeing more and more fragmentation of the forest blocks that are left. So it becomes ever more critical and unfortunately harder to manage our waterways the more developed it gets.
Our Western New York Land Conservancy just completed a project that to me is like a hinge project that connects us as well. And that's the Fredonia project that literally includes that continental divide you spoke about. Step over here, the water goes to Lake Erie, and take another step this way and it flows into the Chautauqua Conservancy area. That to me is an example of how we can and should see the area as a region going forward, so that we're just not stuck in our small silos of thinking. And that's part of why I do this program, to imagine that larger picture, especially if we're going to shoot for sustainability, whatever that means and looks like. Melissa, any other questions? Did we generate any other thoughts that might have come from our good audience?
We did, and I think it's kind of the perfect question with what you're just talking about with the future. And someone asked for each of you, what do you see for the next, say, 10 years for each of your organizations?
Go ahead, Arthur.
I'm going to guess that we share, again, similar goals. We really appreciate the fact that the Watershed Conservancy is assembling all these parcels. And I love the way that John's thinking about this is how do you start to link them? And how do you make the linkages, the connections between them? And I think that some of that's going to happen as a result of additional acquisition. But I think a lot of it's going to come through private landowners adopting better management practices on large scale, on small scale, and everything in between. So John has a dedicated program to do that. We have a dedicated program to do that. That a lot of this has to happen perforce by persuasion, for people understanding the issues, embracing the issues, and making some slightly but important different choices in the management of their lands, and that piece by piece by piece, all of these different pieces together start to add up to a healthier, more cohesive, more integrated and more functional ecosystem for the betterment of us all.
We hope to partner with the Roger Tory Peterson Institute in developing a strategic land conservation plan for this region, utilizing their excellent biological expertise and coming up with a program that would identify resource areas such as what we call the Crown of Chautauqua, which includes the College Lodge Forest as a cornerstone project. We own 4 preserves in the Cassadaga Lakes area. We've been trying to pursue forest and wetlands along Bear Lake for about the last 10 years. And there's large blocks of habitat in various places where we hope to create, landscape scale conservation efforts where we can work with landowners either through conservation easements, keeping in private ownership, or through public ownership, or through acquisition to put together these pieces and keep them intact so that we have habitat for species that need large blocks of habitat intact, whether it be birds or mammals or other species.
Well, any others, Melissa?
No, that was the only question.
All right. Well, this is just about time to wrap up anyways, but again, I reiterate the connection with Chautauqua Institution. Until they just did their recent strategic plan, the lake was, yes, a good neighbor, if you will, but and something to look at, but not something to necessarily feel the educational component that I think they now offer. So I'd like to invite both of you to be creative with their physicality. Obviously, going through a COVID moment here in terms of figuring out how to be both physical and digital, but it's also opened the door to something like this that becomes digital. This will be archived and available for others to see. And Chautauqua has many free items now, their porch series that will allow the world to find out more about our area and us to connect with the world. So keep that in mind, both of you, as you're going forward with your linkages, if you will, and lifelong learning. That's the business I see yourself both involved with a lot of volunteers, a lot of good people that make things happen. You've got a beautiful space. Arthur unfortunately suffered a bit of a casualty in December with a fire. Welcome to the neighborhood type of thing.
Yeah, thank you.
But you seem to be working your way through that. And John, I've just enjoyed looking at your background, for crying out loud. It makes me want to get outside today sooner than later. It's great stuff. You both of you represent good organizations. It's been a privilege to bring you onto this Imagine program, and I hope you've enjoyed the experience like that. Again, it is available. The link is out there on the library YouTube channel. So let's just see, let's wrap this up and see where we go from there. Folks, thank you for joining us today too. And join us next week, same time, same Zoom link, for a discussion on investing in sustainable growth. It's the 5th, one of those interesting months with 5 Tuesdays, and we have the art of investing on when that happens. So we're bringing along and bringing back J.D. Hartman, J.D. and Brian McPherson. Now, both of them are involved with something called Sustainable Roundtable, and we're going to hear more about that. It's with corporations and colleges and universities, so it should be most interesting. I'm Dennis Galecki. Be well and have a good afternoon.
Thank you.
Thanks, Dennis.
Thank you, guys.